The morning sun rose over New Eden Colony like any other day, but Sarah Chen knew it would be the last peaceful sunrise the colonists would ever see. She stood in the command center, watching the radar screens that showed 12 massive alien ships moving toward their planet. The ships were huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. They looked alive, with skin that glowed and pulsed like a heartbeat. Sarah was the colony commander. She had to keep 10,000 people safe, but she only had 2 old patrol ships and some defense platforms that floated in space around the planet. It was not enough. Everyone knew it was not enough. The alien ships belonged to a race called the Kythera. They had attacked 3 other human colonies in the past year. No one from those colonies had survived. The aliens did not want to capture planets or steal resources. They wanted something much worse. They wanted to take human bodies and use them to make weapons. The humans called it genetic harvesting, and it was the most terrible thing anyone could imagine. Sarah looked at the reports on her desk. Each Kythera ship carried thousands of alien warriors. Their weapons could melt steel, and their armor could fix itself when damaged. The patrol ships humanity used were fast but weak. They were made for chasing pirates, not fighting in real wars. "Commander Chen," called Lieutenant Torres from the communications desk, "we're getting reports from the outer sensors. The alien ships will reach our atmosphere in 6 hours. Sarah nodded but said nothing. She had already sent distress signals to every human military base within reach. The nearest help was 3 weeks away. The colonists were digging deeper into their underground shelters, but Sarah knew the shelters would not save them. The Kythera had special tools that could dig through rock and metal to find hiding humans. The 2 patrol ships, Guardian and Defender, launched from the space station that orbited New Eden. Captain Mills commanded the Guardian and Captain Rodriguez flew the Defender. Both ships had crews of 50 people. Sarah watched their blue engine trails disappear into the black of space. "They know they're not coming back," said Dr. Martinez, the colony's chief scientist. He stood beside Sarah, looking at the screens that showed the tiny human ships moving toward the massive alien fleet. "They know," Sarah replied, "but they're buying us time. Maybe someone will hear our distress calls. Maybe help will come." Dr. Martinez shook his head. The Kythera moved too fast. They attack systems far from help on purpose. They want no witnesses and no rescue ships. Sarah knew he was right, but she could not give up hope. The people in the shelters needed to believe their leaders were still fighting. Children were crying in the deep tunnels below the colony. Mothers held their babies and fathers tried to look brave. Everyone was scared. The first battle started when the human patrol ships reached the alien fleet. Sarah watched on the main screen as bright flashes lit up the darkness of space. The human ships fired their plasma cannons, but the green beams barely scratched the alien bioships. The Kythera returned fire with weapons that looked like living lightning. Captain Mills reported over the radio, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "Commander Chen, their armor is adapting to our weapons. Every shot we fire does less damage than the last one." "Keep fighting, Captain," Sarah replied. "Every minute counts." The Guardian lasted 4 minutes before alien biomissiles punched through its hull. The ship broke apart in a ball of fire and metal. Captain Rodriguez and the Defender tried to ram one of the alien ships, but the Kythera caught his ship with some kind of energy beam that held it in place. "They're taking prisoners," Torres reported, his voice shaking. "They're pulling the crew from the Defender." Sarah closed her eyes. She knew what would happen to those prisoners. The Kythera would study their bodies and learn how to make better weapons. It was a fate worse than death. The orbital defense platforms tried to fight next. These were automatic gun stations that floated around the planet. They had bigger weapons than the patrol ships, but they could not move. The Kythera destroyed them one by one with careful, precise attacks. "All platforms destroyed," Torres announced. "The aliens are beginning their descent to the planet." Sarah looked at the countdown timer on her wall. The underground shelters could hold out for maybe 12 hours if the colonists were lucky. After that, the Kythera would dig them out and the harvesting would begin. "Should I send the evacuation order to the deep shelters?" asked Lieutenant Torres. Sarah was about to say yes when something impossible appeared on the long-range sensors. A new ship signature had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of their solar system. It was moving toward New Eden faster than any human ship should be able to travel. "Torres, check that reading," Sarah ordered. "Is that really a human ship?" Torres worked at his console for several minutes, checking and double-checking the data. "It's definitely human, Commander. But it's moving at 90% light speed. That should be impossible." Dr. Martinez leaned over the sensor display. "The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever that ship is, it's not like anything in our fleet databases." Sarah felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe the distress calls had reached someone after all. Maybe there was still a chance to save the colony. On the main screen, the Kythera bioships entered New Eden's atmosphere. Their hulls glowed red from the heat, but they did not slow down. Landing craft began separating from the main ships, carrying thousands of alien warriors toward the colony's main settlement. "The unknown ship will reach us in 43 minutes, Torres reported. "The aliens will be on the ground in 15 minutes. Sarah grabbed the communications microphone. "All shelter commanders, this is Colony Command. Help is coming." Unknown. "Friendly vessel inbound. Hold your positions and do not attempt surface evacuation." She did not know if help was really coming. The mysterious ship might be too late, or it might not be strong enough to fight 12 Kythera bioships. But she had to give the colonists something to hope for. The first alien landing craft touched down just outside the colony's main settlement. Sarah watched through the security cameras as tall, insect-like creatures emerged from the ships. They carried weapons that looked like they were grown instead of built. The Kythera moved in perfect coordination, like parts of a single mind. "Seal all surface entrances," Sarah ordered. "Emergency lockdown protocols are now in effect." The Kythera began their search for the underground shelters. They used scanning devices that could see through solid rock. Sarah knew they would find the shelter soon. 38 minutes until the unknown ship arrives, Torres announced. Sarah watched the aliens on the surface. They were setting up strange machines that looked like metal trees. Dr. Martinez explained that these were probably genetic processing stations. When the Kythera found the humans, they would bring them to these machines. "Commander," Torres called out, excitement in his voice. "I'm getting a signal from the incoming ship." The main communication screen flickered to life. A human face appeared, a man with captain's insignia and eyes that looked very tired. "New Eden Colony, this is Captain Marcus Rivera of the UES Prometheus. We received your distress call. We are inbound for immediate tactical support. Begin evacuation to minimum safe distance. We cannot guarantee your safety during engagement." Sarah felt hope and fear at the same time. Help was coming, but the captain's warning was clear. Whatever the Prometheus was planning to do might be dangerous for everyone nearby. Captain Marcus Rivera stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, looking at the distress signal from New Eden Colony. The message was simple but desperate. 10,000 civilians under attack by Kythera harvesters, all defenses destroyed, immediate, help needed. The problem was that Rivera had direct orders to continue to the safe testing zone, not to engage in combat. The Prometheus was humanity's most secret project. For 15 years, the best scientists and engineers had worked in hidden bases beyond Pluto to build something that could fight the aliens and win. The ship was not just another battleship. It was humanity's attempt to build something that could match the impossible technologies of hostile alien races. Rivera walked through the ship's corridors, feeling the strange hum of engines that burned antimatter in ways that should not be possible. The walls were made of metamaterials that could change shape and properties. Sometimes the metal looked solid, sometimes it seemed to flow like liquid. The ship itself was alive in ways that normal spacecraft were not. The bridge crew worked, at stations that looked more like art than machines. Holographic displays showed information in 3 dimensions, and the ship's artificial intelligence spoke with voices that sounded like humanity's greatest military leaders from history. The AI used something called quantum consciousness mapping, which meant it could think like the best human generals all at the same time. "Captain," said the AI in a voice that combined 3 different historical commanders, "the New Eden situation. Requires immediate intervention. Our current course to the testing zone will result in 10,000 civilian casualties. Rivera knew the AI was right, but he also knew his orders. The Prometheus had never been tested in real combat. Every system on the ship pushed the limits of human science. The engines could create black holes by accident. The weapons could crack planets. Even the hull materials were dangerous. They existed in multiple dimensions at the same time. Commander. Lisa Park, his first officer, approached with a datapad. Captain, I've reviewed the New Eden tactical situation. 12 Cathara bioships against an agricultural colony. Our intervention protocols clearly apply here. Rivera nodded. The intervention protocols were simple. If civilian lives were at stake and no other human forces could respond, the Prometheus was authorized to engage regardless of other orders. But using the ship's weapons for the first time in a real battle was incredibly dangerous. How long until we reach New Eden? Rivera asked. 36 minutes at current speed, replied Lieutenant Commander Singh from the navigation station. But sir, if we push the antimatter drives to maximum, we could be there in 22 minutes. Rivera considered this. Pushing the drives to maximum meant traveling at 90% of light speed. At those speeds, space itself became dangerous. The ship would have to phase between dimensions to avoid being torn apart by cosmic particles. All crew to combat stations, Rivera announced over the ship's communication system. This is not a drill. We are engaging Cathara harvesters in defense of New Eden Colony. All departments prepare for full combat initialization. The ship changed around them. The bridge sealed itself behind armor that appeared from nowhere. The walls shifted and flowed, creating protective barriers around each crew station. Rivers felt his chair adjust itself to protect him from the extreme forces the ship was about to experience. Chief Engineer Yamamoto's voice came through the communications system from the engine room. Captain, antimatter containment fields are stable. Quantum drives are ready for dimensional phase shifting. But sir, we've never tested these systems at combat levels. I know, Chief, Rivera replied, but 10,000 people are about to die if we don't try. The Prometheus accelerated toward New Eden, its hull beginning to glow as it approached light speed. The ship's AI continuously adjusted their course to avoid space debris that could destroy them at such high velocity. Outside the bridge windows, stars turned into lines of light as space itself bent around the ship. Rivera watched his crew work with equipment they had trained on, but never used in real conditions. The weapons officer, Lieutenant Okafor, ran through system checks on weapons that existed only in theory until now. The Stellar Lance drew power directly from the quantum vacuum. The gravimetric missiles could create localized black holes. The reality distortion fields could make enemy ships exist in several different locations at the same time. Captain, Okafor reported, all weapon systems are online, but I'm reading massive power fluctuations in the exotic matter containment systems. If we fire the main weapons, we might damage the ship. Noted, Lieutenant, Rivera said. But if we don't fire them, the Cathara will harvest every person on New Eden. The ship's medical officer, Dr. Reyes, had prepared the medical bay for casualties that might result from their own weapons. The exotic technologies could cause temporal displacement, where crew members might age years in seconds or experience the same moment multiple times. Some crew might even become quantum entangled with alternate versions of themselves from other dimensions. 15 minutes to New Eden, Singh announced. Long-range sensors are picking up the Cathara fleet. 12 bioships in standard harvesting formation. They've landed ground forces on the planet. Rivera opened a channel to New Eden Colony. Commander Chen's face appeared on the main screen, and Rivera could see the fear and hope in her eyes. New Eden Colony. This is Captain Marcus Rivera of the UES Prometheus. We received your distress call. We are inbound for immediate tactical support. Begin evacuation to minimum safe distance. We cannot guarantee your safety during engagement. Commander Chen nodded. Understood, Captain. What kind of ship is the Prometheus? Our sensors are showing impossible readings. Rivera paused. The Prometheus was classified at the highest levels, but these people deserved to know what they were getting into. The Prometheus is a prototype vessel using experimental weapon systems, he said carefully. We will do everything possible to save your colony, but our engagement may cause local space-time distortions. Keep your people underground and away from any surface installations. The bridge crew looked at each other with worried expressions. Space-time distortions meant their weapons could accidentally affect the past or future. They might save the colony, but change history in unpredictable ways. 10 minutes to engagement range, Singh reported. The Kythera fleet is turning to face us. They're reading our approach velocity. Rivera knew the aliens would be confused. No human ship should be able to travel at such speeds. But the Kythera had fought humans before and won every time. They would not be afraid of a single ship, no matter how fast it was. All departments, final combat checks, Rivera ordered. Engineering, are the dimensional stabilizers ready? As ready as they can be, Captain, Yamamoto replied. But remember, we're using technology that barely exists. We're making some of this up as we go. Rivera smiled grimly. Making things up as they went along was what humans did best. While aliens like the Kythera had perfected their technologies over thousands of years, humans were always building something new and dangerous. 5 minutes to weapons range, Okafor announced. Captain, the Kythera are launching biomissiles. They're trying to hit us before we get close enough to use our weapons. The alien missiles were fast, but the Prometheus was faster. The ship's point defense systems activated automatically, creating energy barriers that existed in several dimensions at once. The biomissiles passed through normal space but hit barriers in other dimensions. That's impossible, Singh said, reading his sensors. We just destroyed those missiles by making them miss us in dimensions that don't normally exist. Rivera nodded. This was what the Prometheus was built for, fighting enemies using technologies that broke the normal rules of reality. The question was whether humanity was ready to become the kind of species that used such weapons. 2 minutes to engagement, Okafor reported. All weapons charged and ready. Captain, once we start firing, there's no telling what will happen to local space. Rivera looked at the image of New Eden on his screen. 10,000 innocent people. We're counting on them. The Kythera had to be stopped no matter the cost. Fire when ready, Lieutenant, Rivera ordered. Let's show the galaxy what humanity can do when we stop playing by the rules. The battle began when Lieutenant Okafor pressed the firing control for the stellar lance. Captain Rivera watched the main screen as a beam of pure energy tore through space toward the nearest Kythera bioship. The weapon did not travel through normal space like conventional lasers. Instead, it existed in 11 dimensions at the same time, allowing it to bypass any known defense. The first alien ship simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, a massive living vessel the size of a city. The next moment, there was empty space where it had been. The bioship had not exploded or been destroyed in any normal way. The stellar lance had converted its matter into exotic particles that immediately disappeared into subspace. What just happened? Commander Park asked, staring at the sensors that showed no trace of the destroyed ship. The stellar lance reorganizes matter at the quantum level, the ship's AI explained in its combined voices. The target vessel has been converted to exotic matter and distributed across several dimensions. Captain Rivera felt a chill down his spine. He had known the Prometheus carried powerful weapons, but watching an entire ship cease to exist was terrifying, even when it belonged to the enemy. The remaining 11 Kythera bioships responded immediately. They fired bioplasma torpedoes that could adapt to any defense system, and clouds of viral nanites designed to eat enemy ships from the inside out. The aliens had fought many races across the galaxy, and their weapons were perfected through thousands of years of warfare. But the Prometheus did not defend itself in any way the Kythera expected. When the bioplasma torpedoes reached the human ship, they passed through empty space. The Prometheus had phased its hull between dimensions, allowing the enemy weapons to miss by existing in a different layer of reality. Hull phase shifting complete, reported Chief Engineer Yamamoto from the engine room. We're existing in dimensions 3, 7, and 11 simultaneously. Enemy weapons are targeting dimension 3 only. The viral nanites that reached the ship found nothing to attack. They tried to eat metal that existed in 3 different realities at the same time, causing the nanites to become confused and attack each other instead of the human vessel. Lieutenant Commander Singh activated the gravimetric drives, creating localized distortions in spacetime around 3 more Cathara ships. The alien vessels found themselves trapped in recursive causality loops, where effect preceded cause and time moved in circles. The bioships kept experiencing the same moment, over and over again, unable to break free from the temporal trap. 3 targets neutralized by temporal displacement, Singh reported. They're stuck in a time loop that will last approximately 47 hours. Captain Rivera gripped his command chair as the Prometheus performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. The ship twisted through space in ways that made his eyes hurt to watch. The artificial gravity systems worked over time to keep the crew from being crushed by forces that exceeded normal physics. Dr. Reyes's voice came over the communication system from the medical bay. Captain, I'm treating crew members for temporal displacement syndrome. Some of the engineering team are experiencing the same minute multiple times. Others are aging several minutes in just a few seconds. Rivera knew this would happen. And the ship's exotic technologies created reality distortions that affected everyone nearby, including the crew. But it was the price they had to pay to fight enemies with impossible weapons. The remaining 8 Kythra bioships changed their tactics. Instead of attacking the Prometheus directly, they tried to ram it. The alien ships accelerated to maximum speed, hoping to destroy the human vessel through physical impact. It was a desperate move. But the Cathara had never faced weapons that could make their ship stop existing. The Prometheus AI responded by activating the emergency defense systems. Microscopic wormholes opened in space around the ship, each one no bigger than a grain of sand but connected to points scattered across several light years. When the first Cathara ship tried to ram the Prometheus, it hit one of these tiny wormholes and found itself instantly scattered across a dozen different star systems. Emergency wormhole defense successful, the AI announced. Enemy vessel distributed across 4.7 light-years of space. Reassembly impossible. Lieutenant Okafor looked sick as he watched his weapons displays. Captain, we're not just destroying these ships. We're doing things to them that shouldn't be possible. That last ship will take centuries to die, spread across multiple star systems. Rivera understood his weapons officer's concern. The Prometheus was not just winning the battle. It was fighting in ways that violated the normal rules of warfare and physics. But the alternative was allowing the Cathara to harvest 10,000 innocent civilians. Continue firing, Lieutenant, Rivera ordered. These aliens chose to be harvesters. They made themselves enemies of humanity. The ship's quantum torpedo systems activated next. Unlike normal torpedoes that simply exploded, these weapons created temporary pocket universes where the laws of physics worked differently. When they detonated near 2 more Cathara bioships, the alien vessels found themselves in regions of space where matter could not exist in solid form. The ships dissolved like sugar in water as their atomic bonds became impossible to maintain. Quantum torpedo strike successful, Okafor reported. 2 targets eliminated. Local spacetime will remain unstable for 47 seconds. All crew advised to avoid looking at external displays during the reality flux. The bridge crew closed their eyes as the Prometheus's hull sensors detected dangerous distortions in the fabric of reality itself. For nearly a minute, the space around their ship existed in multiple possible states simultaneously. Looking at it directly could cause permanent damage to human consciousness. But the battle was taking its toll on the Prometheus and its crew. Each use of the exotic weapon systems created dangerous feedback loops through the ship's quantum cores. Warning lights flashed throughout the vessel as systems designed by humanity's best scientists operated beyond their tested limits. Commander, Park checked her damage reports. Captain, we're showing stress fractures in the hull, but our sensors can't locate them. The engineering teams think they exist in dimensions we can't normally see. Chief Engineer Yamamoto's voice crackled over the communication system, distorted by temporal displacement. Captain, several decks have been evacuated. Gravity has become non-Euclidean in sections 7 through 12. Crew members are falling upward and sideways at the same time. Dr. Reyes reported more casualties from the medical bay. Captain, I have 30 crew members experiencing quantum entanglement with alternate versions of themselves. They're living multiple lives simultaneously and having trouble distinguishing which reality they belong to. Rivera knew they were pushing the ship and crew beyond safe limits, but they were winning. Of the original 12 Kythera bioships, only 4 remained functional. The others had been destroyed, displaced in time or scattered across multiple star systems. But the surviving alien ships were not retreating. Instead, they began moving into a formation that made Rivera's blood run cold. Intelligence reports had described this formation before. It was the prelude to the Kythera's most terrible weapon. Captain, Singh called out from his navigation station. The remaining Kythera ships are linking their bio-neural networks. Energy readings are off the charts. The ship's AI spoke in urgent tones that combined the voices of humanity's greatest military strategists. Warning: Kythera Cascade weapon detected. This weapon system can destabilize atomic bonds across an entire solar system. Recommend immediate maximum range engagement. Rivera realized with horror what was happening. The Kythera had decided that if they could not harvest New Eden Colony, they would destroy everything in the system to prevent humanity from claiming victory. The Cascade weapon would turn every piece of matter in the solar system into its constituent. Atoms, planets, moons, ships, and people would all become clouds of elementary particles drifting in space. Time until Cascade weapon activation? Rivera demanded. Approximately 6 minutes, Captain, the AI replied. Once activated, the Cascade field cannot be stopped except by destroying all 4 ships simultaneously. Rivera looked at his weapons displays. The Prometheus could destroy the ships one by one, but not all at the same time. They needed something more powerful than anything they had used so far. Captain, Okafor said quietly, there is one option. The reality engine has enough power to destroy all 4 ships simultaneously. But sir, we've never tested it. The theoretical models suggested could accidentally erase star systems. Rivera closed his eyes. The reality engine was the Prometheus's most dangerous weapon, something so powerful that its creators were not sure it should ever be used. But 10,000 civilians were counting on them, and the Kythera Cascade weapon would kill everyone, in the system anyway. Prepare the reality engine for firing, Rivera ordered. All crew to emergency stations. We're about to find out what happens when humanity stops playing by any rules at all. The 4 surviving Kythera bioships moved into perfect formation, their living hulls glowing brighter as they connected their consciousness networks. Captain Rivera watched the energy readings climb beyond anything his sensors had ever recorded. The alien Cascade weapon was designed to turn matter into energy at the atomic level, spreading destruction faster than light itself could travel. Cascade field generation at 20%, reported Lieutenant Commander Singh. Captain, we're detecting reality distortion starting to form around the Kythera ships. Space itself is becoming unstable. Rivera looked at his crew. They were about to use humanity's most dangerous creation, a weapon that existed more in theory than in practice. The reality engine did not just manipulate matter or energy like conventional weapons. It temporarily rewrote the basic rules that held the universe together. All crew to emergency positions, Rivera announced over the ship's communication system. We are activating the reality engine. All personnel must secure themselves for possible temporal and dimensional displacement. Commander Park checked the emergency protocols on her station. Captain, the theoretical projections show a 40% chance of mission success, 30% chance of localized reality collapse, and 30% chance of unknown effects. Those are not good odds. The odds of survival if we do nothing are 0%, Rivera replied. The Cascade weapon will destroy this entire solar system. At least the reality engine gives us a chance. Chief Engineer Yamamoto's voice came through the communications system from the heavily shielded engineering section. Captain, reality engine charging to full power. I'm reading massive quantum fluctuations throughout the ship. Sir, some of the crew are already showing signs of temporal displacement just from the charging process. Dr. Reyes reported from the medical bay. Her voice strained. Captain, I have crew members who are aging backwards. Others are experiencing their entire lives in reverse while their bodies continue forward in time. The reality engine is affecting us before we even fire it. Rivera felt strange sensations himself. For brief moments he could see multiple versions of the bridge existing in the same space. In some versions, his crew was different. In others, the ship looked completely unlike the Prometheus he knew. The weapon was already beginning to affect reality around them. Cascade field at 50%, Singh announced. The Kythera weapon is starting to affect local space. I'm reading atomic destabilization beginning on some of the asteroids in the outer system. Lieutenant Okafor worked at his weapons station, but his hands sometimes seemed to pass through the controls as if they were not entirely real. Captain, reality engine at 60% charge. The targeting system is having trouble locking onto the Kythera ships because they exist in too many possible locations simultaneously. The ship's AI spoke in voices that now included people who had never existed, as the reality engine's influence began affecting the quantum consciousness mapping. Warning: reality flux approaching critical levels. Crew advised that memories of events that never happened are normal during engine operation. Rivera suddenly remembered a different version of the battle where the Prometheus had never arrived at New Eden. He could clearly recall watching the colony fall to the Kythera harvesters. But he also knew that version of events had not happened. The reality engine was showing him alternate timelines where different choices had been made. Commander Park looked at her station displays, confusion on her face. Captain, according to these readings, this battle has already been fought 17 different ways. In some versions we win, in others we lose, and in a few the entire galaxy ceases to exist. Cascade field at 75%, Singh reported, but his voice sounded like it was coming from far away. Captain, the Kythera weapon is beginning to affect New Eden's moon. The surface is starting to lose molecular cohesion. Rivera could see through the main screen that the moon was indeed changing. Parts of it were becoming transparent as the atomic bonds holding matter together began to weaken. If the Cascade weapon reached full power, the same thing would happen to the planet below and everyone on it. Reality engine at full charge, Okafor announced. Captain, I need authorization to fire. But sir, once I press this button, we have no idea what will happen to us or to reality itself. Rivera thought about the 10,000 people hiding in shelters on New Eden. He thought about his crew, who had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not survive their own weapons. He thought about humanity's future in a galaxy filled with species that viewed humans as resources to be harvested. Fire the reality engine, Rivera ordered. Okafor pressed the firing control and everything changed. For exactly 4.7 seconds, the Prometheus became something beyond a normal spacecraft. The ship existed in all possible timelines simultaneously, becoming a localized god that could rewrite the basic laws of physics. Rivera felt his consciousness expand beyond his physical body as he experienced every possible outcome of the battle at the same time. In some timelines, the reality engine destroyed the Kythera ships but accidentally erased New Eden as well. In others, it worked perfectly, but turned the Prometheus crew into beings of pure energy. In the worst timelines, it unraveled the fabric of spacetime itself, causing the entire galaxy to cease existing. But in one timeline, the one Rivera chose with an act of will that transcended normal human capability, the reality engine reached into the past and ensured that the Kythera Cascade weapon had never begun charging. The 4 alien bioships found themselves retroactively destroyed, not just killed but edited out of having ever existed in this version of reality. The effect on the crew was devastating. When normal time resumed, half the crew was gone. Not dead, but displaced to other timelines where different versions of the battle had occurred. Others were quantum entangled with alternate versions of themselves, hearing voices and experiencing memories from lives they had never lived. Commander Park looked at her hands, which kept shifting between different ages. Sometimes she was young, sometimes old. Sometimes she appeared to be made of light instead of matter. Captain, I think I'm experiencing multiple timelines simultaneously. I remember being killed in this battle, but I also remember never being born. Lieutenant Commander Singh stared at his navigation displays, which showed the ship existing in several different locations at once. Captain, according to these readings, we're currently orbiting New Eden, destroyed in the previous battle, and also docked at Earth's moon. How is that possible? Chief Engineer Yamamoto reported from engineering, his voice echoing strangely. Captain, the reality engine feedback has affected our physical existence. Some of the crew are phasing in and out of normal space-time. Others have become quantum possibilities rather than discrete individuals. Dr. Reyes tried to treat casualties she could barely see. Captain, I have crew members who exist as probability clouds. Others are living their entire lives in a single moment. The medical equipment doesn't know how to scan people who exist in multiple realities. Rivera himself felt the strangest change of all. He could feel his consciousness spreading across thousands of potential timelines, experiencing every possible version of himself that had ever existed or could exist. Sometimes he was a farmer who had never joined the military. Sometimes he was an alien being who had never heard of humanity. But in all timelines, he retained the memory of choosing to save New Eden Colony. Captain, Okafor called out, his voice distorted by temporal displacement. The Kythera ships are gone. Not destroyed, they never existed. According to our sensors, there were always only 8 bioships in the original fleet, and we destroyed all of them with conventional weapons. The ship's AI, now speaking with voices that included people from timelines that had never happened, confirmed the report. Reality revision complete. Cascade weapon threat eliminated through temporal causality adjustment. New Eden Colony preserved. Mission successful. Those success parameters now exist across multiple probability matrices. Rivera looked at the main screen, which showed New Eden floating peacefully in space. The moon was whole and solid. The colony's 10,000 residents were safe in their underground shelters, unaware that reality itself had been rewritten to ensure their survival. But the cost was becoming clear. The Prometheus and its crew were no longer entirely human. They had used a weapon that transcended the normal limits of existence, and it had changed them forever. They had saved the colony, but they could never go home to the reality they had come from. All stations report, Rivera ordered, though his voice now seemed to come from multiple timelines at once. One by one, his crew responded. Some existed as quantum probabilities. Others were spread across several different versions of history. A few had become beings of pure consciousness who could only communicate through the ship's computer systems. They had won the battle, but they were no longer the same species that had started it. The question now was whether what they had become was still human enough to protect the humanity they had left behind. 3 days after the Battle of New Eden, the first rescue ships from the Human Defense Force arrived to find something that should not have been possible. The colony was safe, its 10,000 residents emerging from underground shelters to blue skies and clean air. There were no signs of the Kythera attack except for some unusual readings in local spacetime that made their instruments behave strangely. Admiral Helena Torres commanded the rescue fleet from the battleship Yorktown. She had expected to find either a thriving colony that had somehow defeated 12 Kythera bioships, or the harvested remains of 10,000 human beings. Instead, she found something much more mysterious. Admiral, reported her science officer, we're detecting massive space-time distortions throughout this system. Reality itself seems to be unstable in several locations, and there's a ship in orbit that our sensors can barely detect. Torres looked at the main screen, where a faint outline of a vessel flickered in and out of existence. Sometimes it looked like a normal human battleship. Other times it appeared to be made of crystalline light. Occasionally it seemed to exist in several different locations simultaneously. Can we establish communication with that ship? Torres asked. We're trying, Admiral, but our signals keep getting temporal echoes. When we send a message, we sometimes receive the reply before we finish transmitting the question. Down on New Eden, Commander Sarah Chen met with the rescue teams. She tried to explain what had happened, but her own memories were strange and contradictory. She remembered the Kythera attack clearly, but she also remembered a version of events where only 8 alien ships had attacked instead of 12. The Prometheus saved us, Chen told Admiral Torres over the communication link. But Admiral, I'm not sure that ship or its crew are entirely human anymore. Torres studied the reports from New Eden. The colonists all told similar stories about a mysterious human ship that had arrived and fought the aliens using weapons beyond comprehension. But the details were inconsistent, as if different people remembered different versions of the same battle. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, the fleet's leading expert on exotic physics, examined the spatial distortions around New Eden. Admiral, these readings are impossible. We're detecting areas where gravity flows backward, regions where light moves in spirals, and a small zone near the former battle site where cause and effect operate in reverse order. The strangest discovery was a communications signal coming from the mysterious ship in orbit. When Torres finally managed to establish contact, the voice that answered was familiar, but changed in ways that made her uncomfortable. Admiral Torres, this is Captain Marcus Rivera of the UES Prometheus. We have completed our mission to defend New Eden Colony. The Cathera threat has been neutralized. Torres looked at the face on her communication screen. It was definitely Captain Rivera, but sometimes his image flickered between different ages. Occasionally she could see through him as if he were made of light instead of matter. Captain Rivera, what is your current status? Our sensors are having difficulty tracking your vessel. Rivera's reply came with strange echoes, as if multiple versions of him were speaking at slightly different times. Admiral, my crew and I have successfully defended the colony, but our methods required us to transcend conventional reality. We exist now across multiple timelines simultaneously. Our mission is complete, though the definition of completion has become complex. Dr. Harper leaned over Torres's shoulder. Admiral, I think they used some kind of reality-altering weapon. The readings suggest they actually changed the past to ensure the colony's survival. Torres felt a chill. Weapons that could change history were beyond anything in the Human Defense Force arsenal. Captain Rivera, do you require assistance? Can we provide medical support or evacuation for your crew? Rivera's image smiled, but the expression seemed to come from several different timelines at once. Thank you, Admiral, but traditional medicine cannot help us now. We have chosen to become something beyond normal human existence. We will continue to patrol human space, protecting colonies that conventional forces cannot defend. Over the IBE, following weeks, Admiral Torres interviewed the Prometheus crew members who could still communicate in normal space-time. Their stories were heartbreaking and inspiring in equal measure. They had sacrificed their humanity to save others, becoming beings that existed across multiple realities simultaneously. Commander Lisa Park appeared on the communication screen as a shifting probability cloud that sometimes looked human. Admiral, we can see every possible future where humanity faces extinction. We've become living weapons designed to prevent those futures from occurring. Chief Engineer Yamamoto existed as a quantum consciousness distributed across several different timelines. When he spoke, his words came from past, present, and future versions of himself. Admiral, the ship and crew are now entangled with the fundamental forces of reality. We can repair damage by changing the past so that it never occurred. Dr. Reyes had become something like a living medical scanner, able to diagnose problems across multiple dimensions of space and time. Admiral, we can see threats to human colonies before they happen. We exist now in a state where we can prevent attacks by ensuring they never begin. The hardest interview was with Lieutenant Okafor, whose consciousness had become quantum entangled with every weapon system in human space. Admiral, I can feel every battle being fought throughout human territory. When our people are threatened, I exist in that location instantly. We're not bound by normal space or time anymore. Admiral Torres compiled her reports for Earth Command, but she knew they would be classified at the highest levels. The Prometheus had saved New Eden, but the cost was the transformation of 300 human beings into something that might no longer qualify as human. The official records would state that New Eden Colony had been saved by a prototype vessel using advanced but conventional weapons. The truth, that humanity had created guardians who existed beyond normal reality, would remain secret. But throughout, human space colonists and spacers began reporting sightings of a crystalline ship that appeared during alien attacks. The vessel would arrive before distress calls were sent, destroy threats using impossible weapons, and disappear before rescue ships arrived. Some called it a ghost ship. Others said it was humanity's guardian angel. The sightings followed a pattern. Whenever human colonies faced extinction, whenever conventional forces were too far away to help, the Prometheus would appear. It fought enemies by making their existence retroactively impossible. It saved civilians by changing the past, so that attacks had never been planned. It protected humanity by rewriting reality itself. Captain Rivera and his crew had become humanity's first post-human protectors. They existed in all possible timelines simultaneously, choosing the ones where humanity survived and prospered. They paid the ultimate price, their own humanity, to ensure that their species would never face extinction. Years later, when human children learned about the heroes who protected the colonies, they heard stories about brave captains and clever engineers who fought alien monsters with advanced technology. But the deepest truth remained classified: that humanity's greatest guardians were no longer entirely human, that they existed in dimensions beyond normal space and time, watching over their former species with the dedication of beings who had chosen to transcend mortality itself. The Prometheus continued its eternal patrol, crewed by humans who had become something beyond life and death. They were no longer bound by the limits of single timelines or individual existence. They were humanity's answer to a hostile galaxy, protectors who could never die because they existed in every possible future where humanity needed them. In the depths of space, where normal physics broke down and reality became flexible, the ghost ship sailed between dimensions. Its crew had sacrificed everything human about themselves to ensure that humanity would never again face extinction alone. They were heroes beyond mortality, guardians beyond death, the price humanity paid to ensure its own survival in a universe that viewed human beings as nothing more than resources to be harvested. And in every timeline where human children played, safely under alien suns, the Prometheus watched from beyond reality itself, ready to rewrite existence to keep them safe.